Welcome back, my brave viewers. Tonight's story takes place in a seemingly peaceful suburban neighborhood where safety is a given and strangers are rarely seen. But what happens when an unexpected knock at the door shatters that sense of security? This is the story of the stranger at the door, an encounter that leaves one family questioning everything they thought they knew. Lisa had always felt safe in her home. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind where everyone knew each other and nothing out of the ordinary ever happened. As she prepared dinner that evening, she thought about how lucky she was to live in such a peaceful place. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the kitchen, and everything seemed perfect, until she heard the knock. It was an unexpected sound, a soft but insistent knock at the front door. Lisa froze, her hand hovering over the chopping board. It wasn't the kind of knock that neighbours used, and it wasn't the time of day for a casual visit. Unease settled over her, but she shook it off, convincing herself it was probably just a delivery or a stray neighbourhood kid playing a prank. Wiping her hands on a towel, Lisa made her way to the front door, her steps slow and deliberate. A part of her wanted to ignore the knock, to pretend she hadn't heard it, but curiosity got the better of her. With a deep breath, she unlocked the door and opened it, bracing herself for whatever or whoever was on the other side. Standing on her doorstep was a man. He was tall, with dark hair that looked almost black in the fading light. His skin was pale, and he wore a suit that seemed slightly too big for him, as if he had borrowed it from someone else. But it was his expression that unsettled Lisa the most. Blank, almost emotionless, like a mannequin brought to life. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just stared at her with eyes that seemed too dark, too deep. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, the man raised his hand in a wave, a gesture that should have been friendly but felt anything but. His movements were deliberate, almost mechanical, and Lisa noticed with a jolt of fear that his hand was shaking slightly. He didn't seem dangerous, just wrong, like he didn't belong there, or anywhere. "Can I help you?" Lisa asked, forcing a polite smile, despite the unease crawling up her spine. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he seemed to consider her question, his head tilting slightly to one side as if he were processing it. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and monotone, almost robotic. "I'm looking for someone," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. Is Margaret here?" The name meant nothing to Lisa. There was no Margaret in her house, no one she knew by that name. She shook her head, trying to keep her voice steady as she explained that he must have the wrong address. But the man didn't seem to hear her. His eyes, dark and unblinking, continued to watch her closely, as if searching for something. The man didn't move, didn't react. He just stood there, staring at Lisa with that same unsettling gaze. The silence stretched between them, growing uncomfortable, almost suffocating. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, the primal instinct to slam the door and lock it flaring up within her. But something kept her rooted to the spot, some inexplicable fear that if she turned her back on him, something terrible would happen. Finally, the man spoke again, his voice even lower than before. "Are you sure?" he asked, the words hanging in the air like a threat. Lisa's blood ran cold. There was something in his tone, something that made her feel like he already knew the answer, like he was playing a game that she didn't understand. She nodded quickly, stammering that she was certain that there was no Margaret here. But instead of leaving, the man took a step closer, his shadow stretching across the threshold. Lisa instinctively stepped back, her fear now palpable. Every instinct screamed at her to shut the door, to put a barrier between herself and this strange, unsettling figure. But she couldn't move, couldn't tear her eyes away from his, as if he had her trapped in his gaze. And then she heard it. A faint whisper, so close it was as if someone was speaking directly into her ear. But the man's lips weren't moving. The whisper, soft and sinister, said just 3 words. "Let him in." Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She looked around, trying to find the source of the voice, but there was no one there. Nothing but the cold, darkening evening and the stranger at her door. Lisa's hand trembled on the doorknob, torn between the overwhelming urge to shut the door and the inexplicable pull to obey the whisper. The air around her seemed to thicken with tension, every second stretching out as she struggled with the decision. She could feel the man's eyes on her, could sense his anticipation, as if he were waiting for her to make the wrong choice. With a surge of adrenaline, Lisa made her choice. She slammed the door shut, her heart racing as she locked it quickly and backed away. Her breath came in short gasps, the echo of the whisper still lingering in her mind. She stood there, frozen, listening for any sign that the man was still outside. But there was only silence, thick and oppressive, pressing in on her from all sides. After what felt like an eternity, Lisa dared to move. She approached the door cautiously and peered through the peephole, expecting to see the man still standing there. But the porch was empty. He was gone, as if he had never been there at all. The only sign that something had happened was the rapid beating of her heart and the lingering sense of dread that hung in the air. Lisa tried to shake off the encounter, telling herself it was just a strange, unsettling moment, nothing more. But as she turned away, a shadow moved across the window behind her, just out of sight. She didn't see it, didn't notice the dark figure watching her from the outside. But it was there, waiting, patient and persistent. The stranger at the door wasn't gone.